Welcome to Yield Nerd, an educational show about how you can acquire and manage yield. All right, Yield Nerds, we are on episode 77, and I titled this 8 Weeks to Drama and a Game Plan Against that Drama. And we'll see what you think of it. These are my thoughts. Couple of quick notes to new subscribers. There is a playlist. Please use that playlist. It organizes things into a sequential order so you're not jumping right in the middle of new terms. My usual disclaimers: this is education. It is not investment or tax advice. I am neither your wealth management advisor nor your stockbroker. You do you. I do not have an ulterior motive. Politics and policy are not my jam. All right, here is how I thought we'd share some information for the next 8 weeks. First is the background of how we are here. Second is the infamous Fitch downgrade that nobody can stop talking about. Some say it's terrible, some say, of course, it is a problem. I'll share my education on it. The next is my warning on what I believe would happen in the next 8 weeks and how you as a yield nerd could potentially think about it. I will share how I am thinking about it. So what is the background? Number one, the Fed has signaled that they will keep fighting inflation until it is about 2%. We are at double or slightly more than double of that. The challenge with saying 2% is the correct number is that you never know if you're going to reach that on a sustained basis. So you reach 2%, the next month it's 2.3%. What are you going to do? So these are real problems that we are facing. The Fed is going to be hawkish. The Fed is possibly going to increase rates. We may be kind of sort of near peak interest rates. You never know. If it goes up, it's unlikely to go up for a very long time. Having said that, rates are indeed likely to stay high for a measurable period. So the talk about the soft landing, in my opinion, it seems very far-fetched. We do need a job market crash to some extent. We need some level of GDP impact. Otherwise, the inflation side of the house is going to keep heating. That is the nature of the beast. We've done yield Super Bowls in the past. That hasn't changed much. In the ultra short term, meaning until about 18 months, 12 months, something like that, treasuries are king. Once you pass that, it is all about callable agencies. You may remember that I stopped buying agency bonds only because my only buys there were FFCB and FHLB because of tax advantages. And I was getting worried about too much concentration in those two agencies, and so I stopped buying those. And so then the question is, where do you go? If you just look at treasuries over time, and when I say over time, this is the last 12-ish months, you can see how the beginning, the real short term, the 3-month, 6-month area, has gone up astronomically. The longer term has also increased in terms of yield, just not as stunningly. And so the question that you have to ask is, how much of this can be prolonged? How much of this can be used as an advantage? How long is it likely to last? So we'll see how we can think through it. Now, the Fitch downgrade made me think hard. It made me want to do my research. I'll share my research. Speaking of which, there really were 2 Fitch downgrades. One was the US government debt, and the second is Fannie and Freddie. Remember Fannie and Freddie, these are the agencies that are indeed taxable. People think of them as a government entity. They are not a government entity. They are a private company. Their coupons are fully taxable like corporate bonds, so both state tax and federal tax. And they got downgraded. FHLB and FFCB still maintain their ratings, and what that means is their coupons are likely to kind of sort of stay the same. We're not going to see a 7%, 8% FFCB or FHLB. I will be tempted if I see those kinds of coupons, but I don't think that is going to be the case. Having said that, let's talk about the elephant in the closet after the Fitch downgrade. I wanted to go get those nice looking shirts there, but I can't because there is an elephant in the way, and that elephant is the American debt problem. Our debt keeps increasing, our spending keeps increasing. As a percentage of GDP, we are looking worse than we did before. This is no different than if you are a company, you no longer look like a value investment. You're looking like a jacked up, debt jacked up company. And so I figured, you know what, I need to do my research. So I said, I'm going to go look for the best fiscally managed countries, I mean, around the country and around the world, and said, what are countries that have the lowest debt to GDP ratio? Let me see if I can park some bonds there. So here you go, drum roll. The lowest debt to GDP countries. Close your eyes and think about low debt to GDP. Who comes to mind? I'll give you a second. And here's the suspense. Brunei, Afghanistan, they're looking for some bonds for you to buy. Kuwait, Eswatini, Democratic Republic of Congo, Burundi, Palestine, Russia. I don't think those numbers are the same for Russia, given what is going on there. Botswana and Estonia. Hey, you do you. I just am not feeling like buying bonds from those countries. Nothing against those countries, they just aren't in my filter for where I want to park my money. But if debt to GDP is the only criteria, this is no different than equity investing, where if you just bought stock because a company had no debt and applied no other filter, you may or may not find the best matches. These don't match my criteria. And so I said, you know what? I need to think different. I am going to trust the Fitch rating, and I'm only going to buy AAA debt. And so close your eyes, think about countries that you think have excellent AAA rating, which means their debt to GDP ratio may be a bit high, who knows? But Fitch and all the rating agencies think they are fantastic. Drum roll, here they are: Germany, Denmark, Netherlands, Sweden, Norway. These seem like countries that an average Western person would think are very stable. Look up a couple of these. Look up Singapore's debt to equity ratio, 150 plus, higher than the United States. And the same can be said about some of these other countries in the list as well. And so, for whatever reason, debt to GDP was not the only criteria in the Fitch ratings downgrade. So having said that, you then say, okay, well, maybe I should buy some bonds in Germany. Wait a second, they are funding the war in Ukraine to a great extent, as are many of these other countries. So their debt to GDP ratio is not exactly in a good trajectory. But even if I went there and tried to buy their bonds, the amount of bonds in all of these countries combined is 5% of the bonds available here. Now, what does that mean to you? If you, me, and 10 other pension funds in the US that had a strict directive that said you can only buy AAA bonds, and they said I can no longer buy US bonds, I am going to go to these countries, the number of buyers would be much, much higher. These countries aren't suddenly going to issue more debt, so the supply is going to kind of sort of remain the same. The demand is going to go up by 20x, and that means the coupons will fall significantly for the simple reason that the supply-demand balance will be off. And so that isn't really going to be worth your time because the volume is not there. And so then you sit there and say, gee, I wonder what the coupons are at some of these countries. And turns out, not a whole lot. Hey, remember Singapore? That was a AAA country. Debt to GDP ratio of 150 plus. They pay a 3.5% coupon. Ooh, run and get some. United Kingdom kind of sort of pays the same, but their debt to GDP ratio is not anywhere near attractive. And so the moral of the story here is just measuring debt to GDP, just measuring AAA rating doesn't tell the whole story. You add the coupons to it, and it doesn't look good at all in terms of how much you can earn. And then there is this other minor detail when you go out of the US, and that is currency risk. Close your eyes and think about the American currency versus all the foreign currencies. The talk of de-dollarization or currencies weakening. Oh my God, we're not going to be using American currency. Here is what is going on in the world market. Our exchange rate compared to major world currencies have appreciated anywhere from 5 to 35%. And so you go invest in one of these foreign countries because they have a AAA rating or because their debt to GDP ratio is much lower or both, and you fight the lower volume of bonds and you buy some of those bonds, your coupons now are worth 35 cents on the dollar less because the currency, is now worth less. And oh, by the way, there is a foreign income tax. So if you earn interest outside the United States, not only do you pay your state tax, but you also pay an extra foreign income tax. Good luck. So, what is the moral of the story? Let us not deny this. The American roof has some leaks and cracks. Our trajectory for spending is not healthy. We need to fix spending. We certainly need to increase our GDP. We need to do the things that make us more money. It is that simple. Other country debt has, in my opinion, more disadvantages than advantages. We got to fix our home. We need to figure out how to increase our GDP and decrease our debt and decrease spending. Speaking of our debt and our coupons, those coupons have gone up by 63% in the last year alone in the short term. And even with 2 years, which anything over 1 year is considered a longer term, even in 2 years, they've gone up close to 40%, which is insane. So if you gave your money to an investor or a broker, and the broker said, Mrs. Jones, you gave me 10,000 today, a year later I'm going to give you 10,000 back, except I'm going to increase your dividend payments by 63%. Would you say thank you to that broker? You absolutely would. That is what Uncle Sam is doing for you. After 2 years, yes, you can make more. It's just not as impressive. But in the 2 year and lower term, American debt is just paying by the bucket loads and is state tax free. And so my thought process here is anything under 2 years, I am game. So what does that mean in terms of the next 8 weeks? The Fitch downgrade will be used as another ammunition, as will be many other things. Unfortunately, we are not in a collaborative government. And so it doesn't matter who is right, who is wrong, that's irrelevant. There will be some level of chaos when it comes to the spending limit problems. There may be a government shutdown. So what does it mean for the next 8 weeks? We consult Warren Buffett, who every week buys 10 billion of treasuries. And so he's not worried. I'm not worried either. So for the next 10 weeks, here is what I am doing. Shutdowns usually do not rock the equity market. I don't know whether a shutdown is going to happen or not going to happen, but I am going to keep a lot of dry powder handy right around October 1st, which is the beginning of the shutdown. And I still will buy equities with incredible cash flows and incredible, fit to the value equation that I've talked to you before. The rest of the equities, I believe, will be somewhat cheaper in a few weeks, short of an incredible bipartisan compromise, which may or may not happen. And in the meantime, I am going to buy ultra short-term, 8 weeks or less duration bonds. And I wish there isn't a shutdown, but I am not hopeful. Questions, comments, yieldnerd@gmail.com. Thank you. Thank you for listening to Yield Nerd, a do-it-yourself show for yield accumulation and management.